them non-related simply because he wanted to include a female Ninja Turtle, Venus de Milo. Raph is an alligator snapping turtle. He now has 2 tonfa weapons instead of his size. Oh, and I forgot to mention, all the Ninja Turtles weapons now are magical, apart from Donatello's weapons. And Raphael's tonfas can actually amplify his own strength and turn it into a red energy. He's also the biggest of his brothers. He actually towers over them in this series. He's massive. Leonardo is a red-eared slider turtle. Leo still has his sword, but this one has the ability to open portals. His personality is unlike previous incarnations. He's a little more rebellious in his nature in this version. Donatello is a softshell turtle, and because of this, he has made himself a metal shell to go over his soft shell, his own shell. He also has a drone named Sheldon. Unlike his brothers, he refuses to wield a magical weapon. Instead, he designed a high-tech bow staff that can transform into many, many other weapons, like a rocket-powered hammer for one. And then we have Michelangelo, who is a box turtle, and he is the youngest of the group and is a bit of a prankster and jokester. His weapon, and I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong, is a Kuzari Fundo, which is like a long chain weapon instead of his usual nunchucks. His weapon can become a fire spirit. Like I said, it's all based on magic on this TV series. In this series, Splinter is forced to fight in a tournament called the Battle Nexus. Baron Draxum is impressed with Splinter's fighting and wants to use his DNA with the mutagen to create ultimate fighters, including the Turtles. Splinter escapes and frees the animals being experimented on, but in the process he is bitten by a rat, causing his mutated rat form. The show is said to have been influenced by the Kurt Russell movie Big Trouble in Little China. I absolutely love that movie. We'll probably have to cover that one day. So yeah, it was influenced on Big Trouble in Little China, introducing a mythical side to the story. And that probably brings us up to date on the plot. Now, as I said, I have watched a few of these episodes, and like I said, they are quite manic in their animation. There's a lot of action going on, and they're quite funny as well. There's quite a lot of jokes cracked in there, and it is quite an amusing TV show. It's not as good as the others, but it is enjoyable, and I recommend you give that one a watch. It is really good. In 2015, we were treated to a 6-issue comic book featuring the Ninja Turtles and Batman. Now, in this comic book, we see the Ninja Turtles get transported into the DC universe, and they all end up in Gotham City. So we get the Foot Clan and Shredder running around Gotham City looking for certain scientific components to get them back home to their own dimension. There's a Shredder and Penguin team up in this comic book, and this gets the attention of Batman and the Ninja Turtles, and they soon team up to bring the Foot Clan and the Shredder and the Penguin down. Shredder also teams up with Ra's al Ghul later on in the comic, and they plan to take over both dimensions. This was successful and spawned a lot of sequel comics, including a comic with the animated universes Ninja Turtles and the animated versus Batman. I've not read that one, but I really want to. And then in 2019, we got the Batman vs. the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles straight to DVD animated movie. And it is actually very good. It's slightly different from the comic, but it's very good. In the movie, the Turtles come to Gotham City from New York. In this version, they live in the same universe as Batman. They don't live in separate universes. So at first, it's actually strange to try and think of the Ninja Turtles being in the DC universe. They didn't come from their own universe in this film. They actually exist in the DC universe, or in the DC animated movie universe, that is. In this movie, the Shredder and Ra's al Ghul plan to cause chaos in Gotham by mixing the mutagen with the Joker venom. Now, I'm a massive Batman fan, especially the animated series, and my kids like to watch the Batman cartoons as well. And as I said earlier, they love the Turtles, and so I thought this film is perfect for us to watch together as a family. It's not a perfect film to watch with your kids, believe me. I nearly learned this the hard way. This film, like I said, it's not for kids. It's quite violent in some scenes. In fact, I've never seen the Ninja Turtles in any animation series that is this violent. There's stabbing, decapitations, real ones that is, not like in the 2003 series, it's real decapitations. It was rated PG-13, and this may be Nickelodeon's first animated movie to actually get a PG-13 rating. The animation is really nice, it looks great, although at first I must admit I wasn't sure I would like it. It grew on me, and it grew on me fast, and I was left very impressed. The Turtles are nice and bulky, and look like the comic book versions. Well, when I say that, they look like the recent IDW comic book versions. And then we have Batman, who is in his grey and blue suit in this film, and as usual, he's a badass. He's totally badass in this film. And then we get the Shredder, who is absolutely brutal in this movie. He's killing people left, right and centre. He's slicing, he's stabbing, etc., etc. He's not the 1987 Shredder. No way. He's not the 2003 Shredder. He's not even the 2014 Shredder. Like I said, this Shredder kills in this movie. I think it's the first time we've ever seen the Shredder kill, especially on screen. It might have been hinted to in some of the other cartoons that he may have killed people, but in this, he most definitely does kill people on screen. Like I said, it's brutal. And we even get a Batman versus Shredder scene, and we find out that Shredder is no joke in this version. He's just as good a fighter as the Batman. And spoiler alert, in the first battle, Batman actually gets beaten by the Shredder. The Shredder actually gets the better of him in this. And then we have the Ninja Turtles, who in this version have no problem whatsoever in using the weapons. If they need to stab someone, they'll do it. They're not bothered. Obviously, they're not as ruthless as Shredder, but if they need to use the weapons, they will. Now, there's quite a lot of fan service in this as well, which was nice. I'll just rhyme off a few of them for you right now. In the first fight scene where Shredder and Batman actually battle each other and have a fight, the one I was just talking about moments ago, in this scene, the Shredder jumps down from a platform into the shot and it's all played in slow motion. And it was identical to the way it was filmed in the 1990 movie. You remember right at the very end of the film where the Shredder versus the Ninja Turtles on the rooftop and he enters a shot in slow motion? And first of all, you see his feet and then you see the rest of his body come down as he lands. Well, the scene in the animated movie was animated to look exactly the same as it did in the movie. I noticed it straight away as I saw it. There's no denying that's the intentions they had in mind when they animated that scene. And there's actually quite a lot more fanfare in this. Shredder in the animated movie has a scar on his face, which is another reference to the 1990 movie, because in that movie, Splinter was the one who put the scar on the Shredder's face by ignoring at him. And then there's a scene where we can hear Mikey tell Donnie that you do machines, I'm the party dude, which is also another reference to the 1987 intro to the cartoon. Also, Donatello can be heard saying Bossa Nova at one point, which is a reference to the 1990 movie when we first were introduced to the Turtles in the sewer. And this one I quite liked a lot. There's a scene in the film where Mikey's fighting Mr. Freeze, and Mr. Freeze shoots some ice shots at him, and Michelangelo deflects them with his nunchucks. And it's actually animated to look identical to the way he deflects the ninja stars in the 1987 opening in the intro to the show, which I thought was brilliant. Again, just like the Shredder jumping down on the rooftop, as soon as I saw that animated in this Batman film, where he deflects the stars, I knew straight away what they were doing. It was so obvious, and it was purely just there for the fans of the 1987 series, for the people like me who grew up with the cartoon, who could appreciate something like that, and I really did appreciate it. It was cool. And like I said before, this is a fantastic film, and it's got loads of references that the fans will understand, fans of the Turtles and Batman. Saying that doesn't mean that anyone who isn't a massive Turtle fan or a massive Batman fan will not enjoy this. It is a very good, solid film. And once again, I highly recommend this film. It is a very good watch, and I really enjoyed it. If you've not seen it, give it a watch. It's brilliant. Now, I think I've covered most of the really important entries in the Ninja Turtles legacy. Now, obviously, I can't cover absolutely everything, but I feel that I've picked the best stuff that you could possibly know about the Ninja Turtles from that very first Mirage comic book up until present day. Apart from maybe the video games, and that is deliberate, I must say. There are just far too many out there to talk about. Now, I counted well over 50 games, including mobile phone games and game DLC. And there could well possibly be even more games out there. From what I can gather, the first game that was released was on the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1989, and the last being a game on the mobile devices called Nickelodeon's Super Bowl Universe in 2019, and that was also on the iOS. In between, there's been absolutely loads of Ninja Turtles games. Also, there's been a load of comic books. I've read a few, but there was a certain origin story that I loved in the newer IDW comics. And before the end of our Turtle Deep Dive, I want to tell you why I love this IDW version, this origin story that happened in 2011. So, the Ninja Turtles hasn't really been away from the public eye since it was first created. When the TV show and the movies did take their breaks, we still had the comic books to read, like the Archie comics for younger readers, and the Mirage books for the older fans. Now, you remember me telling you when Nickelodeon bought the rights off Peter Laird? after they acquired the rights, the comics also got a new series along with a new origin story. In 2011, IDW launched the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles issue 1. Now, I've read a few of these issues from the beginning, and I keep meaning to go back and continue, but what I did actually read was massively entertaining. The origin story, I feel, was brilliant in this. Now, remember me saying that I hated the origin story where Splinter is a rat to begin with? I'm sure you've heard me say that. I think I've said it more than once in these last 4 episodes. But in this origin story, Splinter is actually a rat from the beginning, and I liked it. I actually liked it. I've got to admit, they totally sold this one to me. This is the first time I've actually liked any origin story where Splinter started off as a rat. Let me explain why. In this story, Hamato Yoshi is the member of the Foot Clan in ancient Japan. The Foot Clan is led by Oroku Saki. Yoshi witnesses Saki act ruthlessly and without honour and decides to flee the Foot Clan and is branded a traitor. In this version, Yoshi has a wife, Tang Shen once again, but he also has 4 young sons, 4 young boys. So in this version, Yoshi has a family. Now, it isn't long before Saki actually finds where Yoshi is, and he orders that Yoshi, Tang Shen, and his 4 sons be put to death. Tang Shen is attacked and fatally wounded. Her last dying wish is that Yoshi flees and protects the boys. Yoshi and his sons go on the run for many years until Oroku Saki eventually finds them and murders each one of them in cold blood. Yoshi and his son's spirits are reincarnated years later in modern times. Yoshi was reincarnated into a rat, and his son's spirits are all reincarnated into 4 baby turtles who all reside inside a science lab. The science lab is owned by Baxter Stockman, and in this version he works for Krang, and they're doing scientific experiments on the Ninja Turtles and on Splinter. April works at the lab and is an intern and names all the turtles, a bit like in the 2014 movie that came later. So I think it's mentioned in this comic book that the Ninja Turtles and Splinter have been experimented on. Especially Splinter is quite intelligent as a normal rat at this moment in time, so they're not mutated yet, but Splinter is very, very clever in this comic, just as a rat. And that's down to the science experiments that they've been doing on him. The Foot Clan break into the lab and steal the mutagen, and the animals are taken by mistake and get lost in the sewers. And then they eventually get covered in the mutagen, and then you know the rest. They mutate into the Ninja Turtles and Splinter mutates into his humanoid state. But in this version it's slightly different. You see, before they actually got into the sewers and they were mutated, a whole lot of other things went on, and Raphael was actually separated from his brothers and from Splinter, and they lost him as a baby. But later they were reunited in the comic book as they were looking for him all those years. Now, like I said before, I never did like Splinter starting off as a rat. I could never really get it into my head that a rat could learn Kung Fu from its cage. I couldn't really get that into my head. But in this version, Splinter starts to remember his past life. He starts to remember when he was in ancient Japan with his sons, and he remembers Saki as well, who assassinated him and his sons, and he's got all these memories in his mind of his past life. And he also remembers his martial arts training, and he finds it strange as well that he has such a good memory, and it's like reflex actions for him, that he can just do these martial arts without really thinking about it. And so he trains the 4 Ninja Turtles as well, who are his reincarnated sons. And I think it's actually mentioned in the comic book how they learn it really fast because they feel like it comes natural to them as well, because they remember it from their past life. And I thought this was really interesting. I thought it was possibly one of the best origin stories of the Turtles we've ever got. It kind of explains all the little things that I hated about the origin stories in the past. It kind of gives it a fresh, original story, and I really did enjoy this fresh new look that they give us in the IDW comics. And like I said, these comics are still ongoing, and they've spawned many other comics that have branched off into different series. It is a really good read, and I, for one, I am definitely going to get back into reading these. They were very, very good. Also, another thing I remember from this origin story is, to begin with, all the Ninja Turtles were red. Every single one of them were red. And I think, if I remember rightly, I think Raphael had a bit of red in his shell, I think. Or somewhere on his body he had the colour red on him. So they were red out of respect and in hope that one day they'll find the brother. And then when they actually do later on in the comic book, when they find him, he is then given the red bandana and they all choose a coloured bandana for themselves. Leonardo blue, Michelangelo orange, Donatello purple. And I thought that was a really clever, smart way to incorporate them wearing the red bandanas to begin with and then explaining why they moved on to the coloured bandana.